In this video, I'm going to talk about an old school Dungeons and Dragons module, Module B2, Keep on the Borderlands. Now, this is one of my all-time favorite modules, and I reference it a lot. You can see that my copy here is pretty beat up, but also I bought it that way. So, but I wanted a usable copy that I could flip through and not worry about kind of scuffing up as I use it. Now, I want to talk about in this video an overview of this module, what to expect if you haven't bought this module yet, and also include some tips on how to run this type of adventure. I have ran a mini campaign using B2 Keep on the Borderlands before. However, I have not ran a full extended campaign, so I do have some experience with this. I probably don't have as much as some other dungeon masters, so please let me know in the comments below what you agree with, what you disagree with, and if you have any other tips you want to share. We can all learn with this together. And then down in the description below, I have some other links to games I make and stuff like that if you want to check it out. But let's get started with B2, Keep on the Borderlands by Gary Gygax. Now, this is an interesting module to start out because it doesn't jump right into the adventure right away. It actually has a few pages to start out in the module that give you a little bit of detail of how to play Dungeons and Dragons. About halfway through the module, there are items and magic spell lists. Here, I'll show you some of those. And so I think the purpose or the point of this module initially was to kind of be a standalone game where you didn't have to buy the full rules. You could buy this as an introduction to how to play Dungeons and Dragons, kind of like a starter set almost. And then if you wanted to play more, you could go out and buy the books, buy more adventures and things like that. So there is some information at the start. There's some rules tips. There's some tips in the back. There's a glossary about some terms. And like I said, there's basic equipment, spell lists in the middle that kind of show you the basic rules of the old school version of Dungeons and Dragons. So if you are looking to buy this one, keep that in mind. They have some of the rules included and you can just ignore those. Or if you want to dip your toe into old school Dungeons and Dragons and you haven't done that yet, that's actually a good way to do it, is to utilize that rule set included with the module and kind of go from there, playing the module with the rules included. After the basic introduction of the rules of Dungeons & Dragons, the module then gets to the Keep. Now, the module is essentially set up into two different things. It's the Keep, which is where the city is, where civilization is, where order is, and mostly good, I guess you could say. And then outside the Keep is the excuse me, the forest, the wilds, the caves of chaos. And that is where the evil and the chaos reigns. And so there's a tension here between the order and the good of the Keep and the evil and the chaos of the wilds. And it's not exactly black and white. There's a lot of shades of gray. There are some shady characters in the Keep and there are some good characters and outside the Keep, but that's how the module is set up. And so the idea of the module is that the adventurers will leave the Keep every session. They'll go out and have an adventure, and at the end they will return. They might have some loot that they can sell. They might have some more equipment that they can use, or they might even have some gold that they can buy the new things from the Keep so that next time they go out they're a little bit more prepared. So it gives this fun kind of gameplay loop where the adventurers go out, get something, come back, and then they can become more influential within this Keep. I would suggest that if you're going to run Keep on the Borderlands, you start the characters out with as little as possible when it comes to equipment, magic items, spells, and stuff like that. I actually think this adventure works best if the adventurers have few to no weapons at all, because there is a lot of loot out in the wilderness, out in the caves of chaos, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that can really be exciting to get as a player character if you're literally walking around with a wooden stick and maybe some leather armor, and then when you go and get to the armory of the goblins later and you actually find some weapons, that can be really exciting even though they're goblin weapons. And so I would suggest using some sort of beginning mechanism so that the player characters don't have that much gear to start with, because it's going to make a lot of the feelings of like advancement or not even just leveling up, just like getting stuff. It's going to feel really good really quickly when the characters start to come back with more than they left with. This Keep, the the description of the keep within the Keep of the Borderlands is absolutely amazing. It's actually my favorite part of this entire module. It is extremely detailed. They have a full city map, basically the map of the keep, that is fully keyed, so you know who the NPCs are, you know where they are, you know what their motivations are, you know what their role is within society of the keep, you know what type of items you have, you know the secrets that they have, you know everything about them and everything about the keep, you know their motivations, you know what they're selling. And so no matter what the player characters are going to do in this module, if they're in the keep and ask you a question, they've got it covered. It's really, really well designed. It's not a big space, it's a small space, but it's extremely well designed. And I think like I said, I think it's the best part of this particular module. They even have the guild house in the keep completely mapped out so you can see the rooms and where characters might sleep and stuff like that. It's a really, really great resource. Within the keep, my favorite section is a section called Rumors. This is so fun to do with the player characters. Essentially, on their first session, maybe even their second or third session after they've gone into the wilderness for a little bit, your characters are going to want to know what's out there beyond the walls of the keep before they go adventuring. And there's a table full of rumors within the module that is really, really flavorful and really, really fun. Let me see if I can pull it up here really quick. There's 20 rumors, and essentially you can just pick one from the list or do a random roll. And so when your player characters are talking to any of these NPCs, they can tell you something about what's beyond the walls, but it's maybe hearsay because that NPC has maybe never gone beyond the walls of the keep. So they might talk about tribes of different creatures living in the caves down past the old roads, or the fact that all entrances to the caves are trapped and you need to be really, really careful, or that the language of goblins, if you yell Briark, Briark, it's that means we surrender. And it's got some really, really creative rumors in here. And the best part about this rumor list is that not all of the rumors are true. So some of them are true and some of them are false. And as a dungeon master, you can have a ton of fun giving the characters good rumors, bad rumors, and watching them react at the table when they realize, oh, Briark doesn't actually mean we surrender from the goblins. And there's a ton of really fun gaming moments that can come directly from this rumors list. So I definitely suggest you check that out, you utilize that, and it does give you the 1 to 20, like you can roll on a table, but I think just picking and choosing some of your favorites is probably the best way to go, because there's some, like I said, there's some really, really fun ones there. Now, the keep's amazing, like I said, and I think that the best way to use it is kind of what I mentioned before. You want to set up some sort of kind of play style or process where the characters are going to go out into the wilderness, they're going to adventure, they're going to find things, they're going to get things, and then they're going to come back to the keep. And it's here within the keep they can sell things, they can buy things, and I'm not going to say it's the safe space, because it's not. There are some potential enemies within the keep based on player character actions, and it's a little different from your West Marches style campaign in that way. It's not a safe space. It is a space where some of the NPC motivations may clash with the player characters, and there's even a betrayer in the keep. And so it's not safe, right? But it's definitely a place where they can relax and they can spend the gold that they've found. They also can get missions from NPCs within the keep. If your players are kind of not really sure how to get started or what to do, have one of the NPCs send them on the mission. Say, hey, I have a family heirloom that was said to have been stolen by the lizard man, or that was said to have been stolen and taken to the Caves of Chaos. If you get it back from me, I'll give you a lot of gold. And that can give direction to player characters who may not have that spirit of adventure right away. It's also got a ton of opportunity for intrigue because of the rumors that the characters get in the keep, and then they go out into the wilderness and they may see that the rumors are false. They may find new information that contradicts the rumors, and now the player characters are wondering, is this person ill-informed, or are they lying to me? And so there's a lot of play back and forth between what the characters will find out and what they hear in the keep. And like I said, not everybody in the keep on the Borderlands is on the up and up. And so you can really spend a lot of time and have a lot of fun with some of the NPCs who are a little shady, whose motivations don't quite match with the characters and with the rest of the group at the keep. And you can use that to kind of get the player characters on the wrong path at first, and then give them some information to realize realize what's going on, and then come back to the keep and maybe accuse somebody in the keep of being some sort of traitor. So there's a lot of fun there. The last thing that you can do, I mean, there's a lot to do in the keep, but the last thing that player characters do from time to time is hire people. They can hire guards, they can hire fighters, they can hire magic users. And this adventure and module does use some of those rules like encumbrance and light. And if you have a group of players who don't find those rules fun, just use hirelings. Have them hire a magic user who can cast light and say, hey, we'll give you 20 gold if you just stand in the back and cast light every hour or however often it needs to be, so we don't have to worry about it. Or if you don't want to worry about encumbrance rules, just hire like 2 or 3 people to say, hey, just follow us along. We're going to give you 20 or 30 gold and you can just carry all of the stuff we want you to. And then, when we walk back, we don't have to worry about it. So use the hirelings. There's a whole table in here as well that lets you hire NPCs, especially after the characters start earning gold. It's a great way for them to use the gold and take care of some of the parts of the game that they may not find interesting, or just add some beef to the party. If they're struggling to get past an ogre or a minotaur, they can hire a few archers and pepper the minotaur before they go in for hand-to-hand combat and things like that. You can do all of that and more at the keep, within the keep on the Borderlands. The last thing I want to say about the keep is this adventure is super flexible, and one of the best things about this module is that the keep can really be placed into any adventure. There's a ton of really famous dungeon crawls out there that don't have a great starting zone. And so if you're looking at running something else that you're super excited about running, but you don't have a starting place, get this module and use the keep and set it up so that the player characters start at the keep, and then when they adventure out into the wilderness, they go to that other dungeon or into that other environment, but the keep is what you can use for that. So it's very flexible, and I've done that in the past and it works really, really well. Basically, the only thing you have to change is the rumors list and you're good to go. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory within. So the keep is wonderful, and in my opinion is the reason to buy the module. But there's a lot more to the module than just the keep. Once the player characters leave the keep, there is environment and wilderness outside the keep, and this is one of the most fun parts of it. To the north is a hermit they can find. To the south are bandits that they can find. To the southeast are lizardmen. Past the lizardmen are some spiders in a lair. And then if you follow the old road east, it's going to twist and turn and wind until the player characters find the Caves of Chaos. So there's actually quite a bit to explore outside the keep here on the Borderlands. And I think as a dungeon master, if you're going to run this game, you really want to sit down before you start and you want to think about what type of game you want to run. This game, Keep on the Borderlands, has been run as a traditional dungeon crawl, where the Caves of Chaos are the centerpiece of the adventure and the rest of the environment is downplayed. And if that's the case, I would adjust the timing as to how long it takes to get to different places so that you can get to the Caves of Chaos in about a day or half a day's march without too much trouble. There's also people that have run this adventure as a hex crawl, where the main focus of the adventure is wilderness exploration, where the player characters are going out. They don't know anything about what's beyond the walls of the keep besides the rumors they've heard. And so they go out into the wilderness and they map out, okay, there's a river here to the south and it kind of flows east. What's past the river? How do we get across the river? There's a forest to the north. What's in the forest? There's an old road, but it kind of disappears. It's hard to follow. If you follow it to the end, what do you find? These are all great questions that can be answered if this module is run as a hex crawl. And so I would suggest before you sit down, or when you sit down and think about playing this, answer that question. What's the focus of this adventure? Do you want it to be more wilderness, hex crawl and exploration, or do you want it to be more dungeon crawl with the Caves of Chaos? And if you're going to choose the wilderness exploration, maybe it takes 2 days to get to the Caves of Chaos. So the player characters have to spend a little bit more time camping on the road, doing some random encounters at night. Maybe some of the creatures come out of the Caves of Chaos attack. Maybe some of the spiders or bandits or lizardmen go across the river and they decide to attack the player characters because they see their fire. There's a lot of fun to be had no matter how you run this campaign, but that's something you're going to want to answer before you sit down to play. I would also suggest that when you run this game with player characters, the game suggests that you give them a map, and there's a lot of information online about how to run hex crawls. Just give them a blank piece of paper. That's what I would suggest. Give them a blank piece of paper, and the player characters can make their own map. The the size of this map, as far as the wilderness outside the keep on the Borderlands, is not so big that it's untenable for the player characters to map it themselves. It's relatively easy. There are landmarks. There's a forest. There's a river. There's an old road. There are like kind of sheer cliffs that rise up at some point. There's hills, and so it's not super complex. And I think even if your player characters or your players are not fans of mapping, it's relatively easy for them to at least put a few landmarks on a piece of paper or write down a few notes. Hey, there's a forest to the north. Hey, there's a river to the south that flows east. You know, those types of things are super easy. And even if they don't use a map, it's pretty easy to figure out where things are after going into the wilderness once or twice. So that would be my suggestion. Avoid a blank hex paper, avoid some sort of complex mapping system. Just give them a blank piece of paper or have them take notes, and I think you'll have great success. Now, we've talked about how amazing the keep is. We've talked about adventures outside the keep and some of the things that you can find. The last piece and the centerpiece of this module is the Caves of Chaos. This is where the main story is going to take place. Like I said, there's some other parts and adventures outside the keep besides the Caves of Chaos, but the majority of the module itself is focused on the Caves of Chaos. And this is pretty nicely done within the module. It is fully keyed, so in every room you can see, they're caves. So in every cave, you can see what's in there, as far as monsters, as far as items, and there's a lot, again, on motivation. The monsters are motivated to do this or that. And if there's not explicit notes, it's not too hard to come up with motivations for these monsters themselves. And you get, again, this really fun tension between the order of the keep, the chaos, and the caves, but some people in the keep may not be what they seem, and those clues can be discovered in the caves. And all of a sudden, you got to figure out what to do about it when you realize there may be a traitor within the keep on the Borderlands. There's basically several monster factions within the Caves of Chaos. They are all of chaotic alignment. The core struggle to this module is that old school Dungeons and Dragons thing where it's order versus chaos, and that is played up in a big way in this module. You can adjust that if you want. You can go good versus evil, or you can just come up with different reasons for the motivation. But in old school Dungeons and Dragons, that's a lot of what they used was order versus chaos. And that's going to be basically the conflict that occurs here. The caves are very cool and very well done, I think, because there are secret entrances. So there's multiple ways to get into the Caves of Chaos, and the monsters don't know about all of them, or at least not all the monsters know about all of them. There's a lot of opportunity for intrigue, for hiding, for diplomacy, for talking to the monsters, and for trickery. It's important, I think, as a dungeon master to get your players on this line of thinking right away. Because if you don't, it's very, very easy to end up in a situation where the player characters start combat, and then they go from combat to combat, and then they go from combat to combat, and then they're too loud, and all of a sudden they have a large-scale combat on their hands. It's important for the player characters to begin thinking outside the confines of combat and really think about interacting with their environment in other ways. I think you can use the rumors to go about this. Again, there are rumors that talk about the language of some of the monsters, and some of them are true, some of them are false. It's a great way to get the characters involved with using that languages aspect of their character sheet. I've found that that's often ignored in games, and it should be used absolutely in this module. And I think that as much as you can as a dungeon master, try and push your player characters to consider negotiating with the monsters, to consider leading monsters into traps, to consider sneaking around the monsters, because when you do that, the Caves of Chaos become infinitely more fun to explore and plunder. If they just go in and try and, I don't know how many doors there are, but try and kick in every door they find and fight everything, they're going to either die really quickly or not have nearly as much fun. So think about that as they're going into the Caves of Chaos, and how you can kind of get them to think about these monsters on multiple levels instead of just chaos. Within the keys of the Caves of Chaos and what's in each cave, you're going to find also things like treasure, equipment, gold, and a lot of this, there is magical items, there is treasure, but again, there's also a lot of just basic items, and this can be really exciting if you start your player characters at 0, that they barely have any weapons, that they barely have any gold, and if they go to one room in the Caves of Chaos and they find 6 swords and 6 pieces of chainmail or something like that, that can be extremely exciting, even more so than finding like a wand of healing, because now all of a sudden they're leveling up. in the sense that our AC goes up, their ability to deal damage goes up, and I think that's really important. So the Caves of Chaos are set up that way, where the player characters should have next to nothing. So keep that in mind, because some of the things that they find may feel underwhelming otherwise. You can also change it though, right? If your player characters come in and they're already heroes, just adjust it and add some magic items or things like that. Finally, at the bottom or the center of the Caves of Chaos, you're going to find the Temple of Evil Chaos, and this is the final conflict. It's like the boss fight, and it involves the traitor over in the Keep on the Borderlands, and that's going to be the culmination of this module for you and your players. So that is module B2, the Keep on the Borderlands. In my opinion, it's absolutely a spectacular module. I like it best because it's accessible. It's great for people who have never played Dungeons and Dragons. It's a great opportunity to try out old school Dungeons and Dragons if you've never played that. And it's a great opportunity to try like hex crawls or dungeon crawls if you've never done that style of story before. It's also super flexible. So even if you're not interested after this overview of running the Caves of Chaos, or finding out who the Hermit is up to the north, or finding out what's in the Spider's Lair to the southeast, if those things don't interest you and the Caves of Chaos don't interest you, in my opinion, the Keep on the Borderlands is worth the purchase because you can use that Keep over and over for your players. Probably not every time because they might catch on, but it's generic fantasy, and you can plug it into pretty much any adventure you want. So that is my overview on Keep on the Borderlands. Again, let me know what your thoughts are, what tips you have, what you agree or disagree with me on in the comments below. And also check out the links below. Some things I build and make are included there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.